The continuing saga of Prince Andrew's downfall has dragged with it not only his former public role, but his daughters.
They shouldn't pay for the sins of the parents, clearly, but I wouldn't expect them to have any front and centre row. Don't expect to see them on the palace.
There is a no-holds-barred, warts-and-all tell-all story waiting to be shared with the world.
The reports are that King Charles has vowed to protect Beatrice and Eugenie.
It's a Shakespearean example of how hereditary privilege magnifies both honour and disgrace.
This is full disgrace and pretty much unprecedented as far as we can see.
The royal marriage that shocked everyone, but not for the reason you think. When a mother looks at her daughter's failing marriage and says the husband has absolutely no character, those words cut deeper than any tabloid headline ever could, especially when that mother is watching her daughter navigate one of the most scrutinized marriages in modern royal history. This isn't about scandal or sensational photographs. It's about something far more devastating. The slow realization that the person you married simply isn't who you need them to be. The story of Andrew and Sarah's marriage has been told countless times, but there's one perspective that changes everything, and it came from the person who knew Sarah best. In July 1986, Westminster Abbey witnessed what seemed like a fairy tale beginning. 500 million people around the world watched as Sarah Ferguson married Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son. The crowds cheered, the sun shone, and Britain celebrated what appeared to be a perfect match. Andrew was riding high on his reputation as a Falklands War hero, young, confident, seemingly the ideal royal prince. Sarah brought something the monarchy desperately needed: genuine warmth and relatability. She laughed freely, spoke openly, and refused to act like a porcelain doll on display. But behind the scenes, Sarah's mother, Susan Barrantes, was watching with a more critical eye. Years later, she would share an assessment so blunt, so cutting, that it reframes the entire narrative of this failed marriage. The cracks appeared almost immediately, though few wanted to see them. Andrew's naval career meant he was gone for months at a time. While the public praised his dedication to service, Sarah found herself isolated in a world she barely understood. Royal life is challenging enough with a supportive partner. Imagine navigating it essentially alone, with 2 young children under constant scrutiny.
What's happened with Andrew losing his title and now her losing Duchess of York, it just proves that the York brand is totally toxic.
Their parents' misjudgments have repeatedly placed them in the blast zone.
So, I mean, this is a much bigger problem than I think people have realised.
The affairs of the royal family tells you that we are living in quite bizarre times.
I've read that Charles will somewhat try and ring-fence Beatrice and Eugenie as his nieces.
Ever-evolving soap opera, that is, of course, what's happening over at Royal Lodge.
Susan Barrantes watched her daughter struggle. She saw the loneliness, the pressure, the slow erosion of Sarah's confidence. When she finally spoke publicly to an Italian magazine years later, her words were carefully chosen. She acknowledged Andrew's positive qualities: his good looks, his generosity, his willingness to help others. Then she delivered her verdict: he had no character, none whatsoever. This wasn't a bitter ex-mother-in-law lashing out. This was a mother who had observed up close how her daughter's marriage functioned, or failed to function. When she said Andrew lacked character, she wasn't talking about scandal or infidelity. She was talking about something more fundamental: the ability to show up consistently, to provide emotional support when things get difficult, to be a true partner rather than just a charming presence. By the early 1990s, the marriage had descended into chaos. Both Andrew and Sarah sought comfort elsewhere, their extramarital relationships becoming so blatant that senior royals felt compelled to intervene. The situation had spiraled so far out of control that, according to various accounts, Sarah actually invited one of her lovers to Andrew's 30th birthday celebration. This wasn't just poor judgment, it was a sign of a marriage that had lost all structure and mutual respect. The intervention came too late. In March 1992, Andrew and Sarah announced their separation. Sarah, attempting to maintain composure for the cameras, insisted everyone was well and getting on with life. But behind her brave face, a brutal transformation was taking place. Almost overnight, she went from being one of the monarchy's most popular figures to one of its most vilified. The custody battle loomed large in Susan Barrantes' mind. She was determined that her daughter wouldn't lose her children, a fear that carried personal weight. Critics were quick to point out that Barrantes herself had once left her young family to start a new life in Argentina. But perhaps this history made her more determined to ensure Sarah didn't suffer the same fate, being pushed out, made disposable by a system that no longer had use for her.
This is the worst look Fergie has ever had.
Lie low, keep quiet. It's not something that she does readily.
She's hoping some sort of generous benefactor will take her in, but the thing is, that's been happening now for 30 years.
Yeah.
So she's going to be sort of pushed towards saying as much as she possibly can.
The layers of duplicity and shallowness, this is a new low.
Ex-wife and fellow resident Sarah Ferguson pours out her heart to staff at a secret bar called the Doghouse.
The leaks began almost immediately. Stories designed to paint Sarah as the villain flooded the press, while much of the criticism was based on her actual behavior, which was admittedly concerning. Barrantes believed the blame was being strategically redirected to protect the institution and Andrew's reputation. Years would pass before Sarah offered her own sanitized version of events. In interviews, she claimed she wanted to work, to be financially independent, and that commercial pursuits weren't appropriate for a royal princess. It's a neat explanation that sidesteps the emotional devastation, the affairs, the complete breakdown of trust between two people who once stood before the world promising forever. But Susan Barrantes' assessment fills in those carefully edited gaps. She wasn't concerned with protocol or career ambitions. She was talking about the basic building blocks of a sustainable relationship: reliability, emotional strength, the ability to weather life's mundane challenges together. What happened next defies conventional divorce logic. Despite officially ending their marriage in 1996, Andrew and Sarah never truly separated. By 2008, they were living together again at Royal Lodge, occupying different wings of the same grand house. They've spent decades calling themselves the happiest divorced couple, appearing together at family events, supporting each other publicly, speaking warmly of their unusual arrangement. Their daughters reinforce this narrative of resilient co-parenting. Princess Beatrice has spoken about a childhood filled with adventure and joy, crediting her mother with finding light, even in dark moments. She describes Sarah as someone who taught resilience through example, who showed that life could be embraced even when circumstances were challenging. But notice what's missing from these recollections: Andrew's active presence. He's there, certainly, but more as a background figure than an anchoring force. Present but not essential, involved but not steady. The very absence of character his former mother-in-law identified decades ago, the recent years have only amplified these dynamics. As various controversies have stripped Andrew of his titles and public roles, Sarah has remained steadfastly supportive. They continue their strange dance of closeness without commitment, partnership without papers, a family unit that functions despite its fundamental fracture.
She had very much been brought back in from the cold. That is why now this will sting so much for her.
King Charles is battling with Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson to convince the Yorks to move out of the royal.
Sarah Ferguson considers offers for a tell-all TV interview.
Is Fergie really finally clearing off?
She doesn't have the protection of the royal family, and she's going to need to make money.
Fergie people are actually worried about. I think her mental health is really at a low ebb.
It's the loss of the privilege that goes along with a royal title. That's really the most significant one, is the loss of his home. So
this brings us back to that devastating assessment from Susan Barrantes. When she said Andrew lacked character, she wasn't predicting the scandals that would later engulf him. She was identifying something more subtle but equally destructive: an inability to be the stable, consistent partner her daughter needed. Character isn't about grand gestures or public personas. It's about showing up day after day, especially when the cameras aren't rolling and life becomes routine. It's about emotional reliability, about being someone your partner can depend on when isolation sets in and pressure mounts. By this measure, Susan Barrantes saw clearly what others missed or chose to ignore. The question that lingers is whether this marriage was doomed from the start. Was it Andrew's lack of character alone that destroyed their union? Or was it a perfect storm? His absence, combined with Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior, their mutual infidelities, the pressure of public life, the weight of institutional expectations. Perhaps the answer lies in their post-divorce arrangement. They've created a relationship that works precisely because it demands less. Living in separate wings allows closeness without true intimacy, support without deep dependence. It's a solution that acknowledges what Susan Barrantes identified years ago, that some people, no matter how charming or well-intentioned, simply lack the character necessary for the daily work of marriage. As they prepare to leave Royal Lodge, their story continues to evolve. But the fundamental truth Susan Barrantes spoke remains unchanged. In the end, marriages aren't destroyed by dramatic scandals alone. Sometimes they simply erode under the weight of one partner's inability to truly show up, to be present not just in body but in spirit, to demonstrate the quiet strength that holds relationships together when everything else falls apart. The saddest part? Sarah knew it too. That's why she stays close but not too close. Connected but not committed, she found a way to have what she needs from Andrew while protecting herself from what he cannot give. It's not a fairy tale ending, but perhaps it's the most honest resolution possible when character is absent from the foundation. Their story serves as a reminder that the most important qualities in a partner aren't always the most visible ones. Behind charm and generosity, beyond titles and public personas, the question remains: when life gets difficult, when the excitement fades, when you need someone to simply be there, will they show up? Susan Barrantes asked that question and found the answer lacking. Decades later, her words still resonate with uncomfortable truth. Character matters, and its absence, no matter how carefully managed or creatively worked around, leaves a void that no amount of happy divorce spin can truly fill. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.